You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. Did you see the first thing that Eloy Jimenez asked for when he got to Baltimore? A team that is better right now than any team he's really been on and has a better chance and is probably built better to go deeper in the playoffs than the White Sox ever went during this very, very small window. Let me guess what he asked for. Advil, kinetic tape, and an ace bandage. No, he wants to play the outfield.
Oh, so he'll need Advil, a kinetic tape, and an ace bandage.
He said that he gives better production if he's playing in the outfield. So he's blaming the fact that he had a terrible season on the fact that they would not put him in the outfield because he's made out of glass. So now what he wants to do is he wants to be shoehorned into the Orioles outfield, an outfield that is so stacked the Orioles can't get some of their high-end prospect, better performing guys in that outfield on a regular basis. And he's like, I'm not really a DH. I should be playing the field. I laughed so loud when I read that. I had to put my phone down. I giggled. I walked around the house and muttered to myself for 10 minutes like, he wants to play the outfield for the Orioles? That was one of the funniest things that I've read all year long across Major League Baseball.
You knew it was coming. And it's such an old argument against the DH and DH. I mean, I remember Frank Thomas at one point talking about that, and he was not good at first base. He ended up hurting himself playing first base and sort of resigned himself at that point. You would have thought Eloy would have had the same thought when he jumped to get a home run that was 20 feet over his head and injured himself and probably did permanent damage.
Changed his whole career. Changed his whole career with that injury.
Never been the same since. That he would sit there and go, you know what, maybe the best thing I can do is just focus on hitting and not worry about trying to play the outfield. But you're right, it's an outfield that is so stacked that Cedric Mullins, who is one of the best outfielders in baseball, not just a couple of years ago, and Austin Hayes, who was an all-star last year, are both on the outs because they have so many young outfielders coming up, and they traded a guy in Kyle Stowers at the trade deadline that honestly I would have loved to have seen the White Sox pick up because he was a fast-rising prospect who had no prayer of making the team at all. I would have loved to see the White Sox get Austin Hayes and not have him go to the Phillies because I think the Phillies would have gladly traded for Tommy Pham and maybe given us something more than I don't even know what the guy. How do you match up that trade? And we've talked about trade deadline stuff. And
yeah, we have. There's one thing I want to get into today now with this report of who the Twins offered the Sox and why the Sox supposedly didn't want to make a deal that might have been better than what they got from the Dodgers. There's a lot we're going to talk about at Cork and Kerry at the park on Friday. It's coming up. August the 9th, getting here quick, and it's going to be live. We're going to start talking at 5. In fact, the schedule is becoming bigger and better. So I had discussions this week with Rock 95.5 here in Chicago. They're going to come out. Angie Taylor and the whole gang are going to be there at Cork and Kerry at the park at 4. They're going to be playing some music, and they're going to be doing kind of a giveaway. They're giving away Metallica tickets, which is awesome. And I hope that they have a few drop out of their pockets so I can go follow them over there. Right. I mean, that would be lovely. I would love to go see Metallica. I was like, wow, that's a great prize. They're going to kick off at 4 and they're going to hang till 6. But at 5 o'clock, all the mics and the feed and everything else like that is going to switch over to Sox in the Basement and from the 108. And we're going to be out there with our live 2-hour thing that we're doing. It's not going to be broadcast later. It's an in-person, interactive, fun event that we're going to be having at Cork and Kerry at the park. And for the first hour, we're going to also be helping them give away those Metallica tickets. It's a nice little collaboration that I never thought was possible with podcasts and radio stations. Like, if you told me 5 years ago a podcast would be working with a radio station at an event, I would tell you that's crazy because we're like two different animals, and
we're mortal enemies.
I don't think we're mortal enemies, but I mean, like, I just would have never have seen it coming I would have never seen that coming 5 years ago. But, 95.5, great radio station, cool people. So far working with them has been nothing but easy. We know the 108. They're awesome. This is going to be a fun event. Get out to Cork and Carry at the park, 33rd and Princeton, in the shadow of the ballpark. Great menu. Bring the whole family. Should be a lot of fun, indoor, outdoor, and so many giveaways, I would imagine, between the three groups. And so much going on. I don't know where else you would be Friday night kicking off the Crosstown Series on the South Side with Cork and Carry at the park. Okay, let's talk about this report. Dan Hayes, who's basically the Scott Merkin of the Minnesota Twins, right? Is that fair, or is he the athletic guy? Whatever. I know he's up there and he's always covering them.
Right. He's an insider with the Twins. He's one of their primary beat reporters. He knows things. He's a guy that knows things.
He said, I think on Foul Territory, that the Twins story at the trade deadline is that they were asked for the three top prospects that they have by the White Sox for Eric Fetty. And the Twins turned them down. Okay, fine. They don't want to give up anyone in their top three. They went with their number 5 on MLB Pipeline, a kid by the name of Luke Keeschel, or Keichel. It doesn't matter. He's not going to be on our team, and he's in Double-A. What does matter is that he's a 320 hitter or something like that at this point across 2 levels, a 950 OPS, second base outfield seems to be something we've been looking for like a decade on the South Side. Young kid, 21 years old. When you read his scouting report, one scouting report says that he's playing second base so well, but the Twins are thinking he could be like a center fielder. Like, we're talking about an up-the-middle athlete. We always talk about you want to draft guys like that. Here's a guy who's hitting well, has a good hitting process. It's showing that it's working. He's moving through the majors well. He's a top 5 in their organization. He would have been the centerpiece of the deal. He seems like a better option than Miguel Vargas to me. Now, I know there's a lot of people that love Miguel Vargas, but he is fitting in really well so far on the South Side. I saw a dumb error, and I don't think he's gotten a hit yet. So he's right there. I mean, he's hit the ground stumbling, just like everybody else on the South Side. You are a White Sox, Miguel Vargas. Good for you, okay? But, I mean, this would have been the kind of guy that fits what they're supposedly trying to do in the terms of the hitters are trying to get, the process, how they approach the play. He feels like the right guy. And the explanation that Dan Hayes gave that the deal didn't work out is that the Sox were reluctant to trade within their own division. And that seems crazy to me, because I get not wanting to trade one of your prospects or 2 of your prospects, guys that you believe are going to be in the majors, and you don't want to watch them for 8 to 10 years beat you on the field and regret that you traded them for a rental. But that's not what you're doing here. You're trading the rental plus 1 year, and next year is not going to be a competitive year based upon the way that they're doing things. I wish it was, and maybe they still have big plans in free agency next year, and it's going to be a big shocker to all of us. But it doesn't seem like they're trending the way that I think they should be trending. So why are you worried about facing Eric Fetty for the rest of this year and next year to the point where you wouldn't take what might have been the better offer? And you just kind of discounted it and you moved on. And so that is just baffling to me. And the only thing I can say before I turn it over to you, my friend, is unless this is a Twins spin to their fan base, like, hey, everybody knows the White Sox are a joke. And trust me, all of Major League Baseball thinks the White Sox are a joke. Nationally, people are laughing at us. We're terrible. So maybe the idea is spin why they didn't do enough on, well, we were trying to be reasonable, but look at these idiots. Like, maybe that's what they're doing. But if that's not the case, and imagine if that was a centerpiece with maybe another prospect or 2 coming back, it is odd to me that that's the reason why that deal doesn't get done. No, that is really, really dumb. And I agree with you. If the roles were reversed, if the White Sox were acquiring some Eric Fetty-like starter off of the Twins, and we're worried about, God, we still do think Lenyn Sosa, who's part of this deal, is going to be something. We think Brian Ramos, who's part of this deal, is going to be something. We don't necessarily want to help our competitor for a long period of time because we don't want to do this for just 1 year. I get that. And that's been a long-standing thing in baseball. That's nothing new. It's like DH is complaining that they don't get to play the field. But in this situation, Eric Fetty, if he has another good year next year, he's going to price himself out of the Minnesota Twins, out of the Chicago White Sox, probably out of the AL Central in general. He is going to go to one of the coastal teams that tends to spend money because he is going to be on his last contract. The guy's over 30.
That's his last chance to make any real money in this game and finish off strong. And that's where he's going to be. He is not going to be a Minnesota Twin for the next 10 years because the Twins just don't have that kind of scratch to throw around either, although they do actually sign major league level contracts for guys when it's merited.
Sox in the Basement listeners, for exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. They are not traveling salesmen who show up at your door with a dingy little example and you got to look in a book and try to pick out what your windows are going to look like. Instead, get into their big, beautiful showroom where there's an owner on site and also on site when they put in your windows. All Window and Door Superstore installers, they don't farm out the work. They've been doing it that way for 40 years in Oak Forest since 1985. All major brands are custom made and no stock items for a perfect fit. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest is 1/2 block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. I'm really curious as to why Pedro Grifol is still managing the White Sox. Now, I know that it is becoming kind of hip to say online and to argue on the radio, and I'm sure there's other podcasts that are arguing it. I don't know, but it seems like it's becoming the hip thing to do, to say, well, make him wear it. Have Pedro sit through the end of this year because I hate him. So let him be the most inept manager in history. He deserves that. So, and it doesn't really matter if you get rid of him. And I guess I get that, because if you've been a fan of this team for as long as you and I have been, Ed, and you know who the owner is, you don't believe that Jerry's going to do the right thing at this point. So you're like, well, then I'm just going to find the positive in Jerry doing the wrong thing. But I think it's still the wrong thing to have him managing. We heard James Fox at the end of the last episode talk about the idea of it's time to just have a different person giving the message, because you are bringing up young players and hoping to show that you're going to change directions here on this team after an abysmal last couple of years. And you see how deflated Luis Robert Jr. is, and maybe he needs somebody else giving the message. But I would also make the argument that Pedro's lineup decisions, at least in the first couple days since the deadline happened, and we should clearly be now changing direction on a lost season, his lineup decisions don't seem to match what the team is trying to do. And I don't understand a Nicky Lopez playing every day at shortstop at this point. I don't understand a guy who is below replacement level, who is hitting 230, who has been playing the majority of the time on a team that is on its way to a historically bad season. Why he's given he's a veteran, and I really don't want to just take him out of the lineup and put him on the bench because, he just joined the team this year. He was one of 5 guys in a dump from the Atlanta Braves. I know he's from Naperville, and we all like the marketing angle of him, like the local kid, but you should have Brooks Baldwin out there all the time. You should have Lenin Sosa out there all the time, because he's got a higher upside, even though it hasn't worked out. And a lot of the reasons why it hasn't worked out is because the White Sox have not consistently given him a long amount of time to go out there and play every day. They've really messed with that last stage of his development coming up here. You have Miguel Vargas, who is a third baseman. I'm sure you're trying to find ways to get him in the game and still get Dominic Fletcher in the game. And then you might want to see if Corey Julks has anything left in there, and you still got to give playing time to the guy you're paying all that money to in Benintendi. There's better reasons for other players to be out there playing every day. And meanwhile, my shortstop every single day, sitting at the top of the lineup all week long, is Nicky Lopez. And I just don't understand the move. And that's one of the other reasons why I think you have to have somebody else delivering the message, because it's going to be somebody that's going to say, this is what we're doing, because the front office is looking long-term and they're not worried about the next 5 days.
Even if it's not entirely Pedro's fault. Okay, let's give the guy as much benefit of the doubt as a guy could be given. You are on a historic pace to lose games in the major leagues. This is the worst season a team has seen kind of ever. And Pedro Grifol cannot have any credibility, because no matter what you kind of want to claim he did or didn't do, no matter what you point the finger at the end of the day, he is the manager of the worst team in Major League history. You don't have any credibility as a manager. I don't think he'll ever manage again. He may not ever coach again in the major leagues. He doesn't have Hall of Fame credentials to sit there and say, it was the players, it wasn't me, it was just a bad year, like all of these things, bad things happen. He's a second-year manager. He needs to go, if nothing else, there needs to be a new voice in there sitting there saying, okay, you know what? This season sucked, but everybody on this team is playing for their future at this point. There are no veterans on this team that might retire at the end of the year. There are no guys that are going to be fighting, fighting age versus just fighting the free agent market or whatever. Lenine Sosa, you're right. He needs to play. And Brooks Baldwin needs to play. You need to figure out what these guys are. You need to figure out what Dominic Fletcher is.
I think the mentality, actually, of why would you make a move with Pedro, what does it matter, is very similar to something that we see with rebuilding teams across Major League Baseball. What generally happens is you get a fan base, you convince them like, hey, we're going to go young, we're going to build, and, we got to protect all this service time, and, when it's time, we'll just flip the switch and be a good team, right? We'll lose 100 games a year for 3 years. We'll get a bunch of draft picks. We'll develop young players. And then when we're ready and our window opens, we're going to immediately win 90. And that never works. And and that's the same reason why you can't keep around a guy like Pedro for the rest of the year. You have to start somewhere when you have 100 holes in your ship. It's like they're sailing a ship. It's taking on water everywhere. And then the argument is, well, what's the point of plugging that hole when we have all these other holes? Well, you got to start doing something because you can't do it all immediately. You don't just all of a sudden say, okay, it's time to plug the holes, guys. Everybody get out your hole plugging materials and we're going to do it simultaneously. But until we're able to do it all simultaneously, there's no reason to fix this leak over here. I'm just going to let the ship continue to sink at a quicker rate because of how many holes there are in the ship. That's how it feels. It's like it's that same mentality of we're just losing games. It doesn't matter. Hold everybody down in the minors. You see teams do this. The Sox did this. When you hear Brian Bannister's philosophy of, I like to see some of these young guys get up and get some experience in the bullpen in the back half of seasons before they go to spring training and try out to be part of the rotation or move into the major leagues permanently. That makes more sense. That's, okay, we're going to make these fixes gradually because you can't just flip a switch. Holding on to Pedro with the argument of it doesn't make any difference is the exact same thing as at some point we'll just reset. And it just doesn't work that way. You have a lot of problems here. Keeping Pedro Grifol on your team right now sends a signal to every person in the organization, from the players on the field to the people in the background to the kid in AA, that there's no accountability, that the team is not a serious team, that in the end decisions are made to save a couple of bucks by the owner. And you can have minimal effort and they'll give you a long leash in a lot of cases. That culture is like rot inside of an organization. That's why you move on from Pedro Grifol. That's why you do it. You say, we're not gonna be the worst team in baseball and not show anybody any accountability whatsoever. I can't believe Chris Getz wasn't in Jerry Reinsdorf's office on Thursday saying, I saved you money on the Eloy Jimenez buyout. Can we just count that somehow as a way to pay off this extra time with Pedro? Because I know you don't like paying him. I mean, it had to have been a discussion and he had to have been shot down or Pedro would have been fired on Thursday on the off day. This again is why everything starts at the top with Jerry Reinsdorf. The rot in the organization is because he allows all the holes to stay flooding the ship. Because of the lack of accountability, which has been the problem the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that, we're in this position. We didn't get to this position because we flipped the switch and we're bad. It was built over time. To get out of this position, you're going to have to build it over time. You can't sit there and say, well, none of this matters. We'll flip the switch in spring training in 2025. And that's the core problem with the Chicago White Sox. So I feel like, personally, if you're sitting there saying it doesn't matter to move Pedro, you are accepting one of the core problems that there is with the Chicago White Sox. And now joining us on the phone, Dave Marin, the Sox nerd. He puts all those tidbits and trivia nuggets up there on the scoreboard at the rate each and every game, and he joins us here weekly on Sox in the Basement for even more, and he's brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, see everything they have going on each month, including, I already know, off in the distance in a couple of months, we'll be at the Oktoberfest, once again put on by Pollyanna Brewing. Sox in the Basement will be out there. There's a lot more before that happens, though. See it all at LamontDowntown.com. Nerd, what's going on?
Chris, the White Sox will visit Oakland for the last time early next week, and to that I say, good. I harbor no ill will against the city, which will lose the team to Sacramento next season. And boy, I would trade fortune with the A's beginning in about 1971, that's for sure. But Oakland has been a house of horrors for the Sox, capped by that dismal Game 3 of the 2020 Wild Card Series. The Sox enter this series 143 and 172. That's a .454 winning percentage in Oakland. The Sox haven't been .500 in Oakland since a 4-3 win on May 10th, 1998, pulled them to 110 and 110 in the city. Starting pitcher Jamie Navarro was the winner in that one. The Sox haven't had a winning record in Oakland since a 6-2 win behind a complete game from pre-surgery Tommy John made them 7-6 in the bright side of the bay on June 28, 1969. In general, it hasn't been the pitching that has doomed the Sox in Oakland since the A's relocated there from Kansas City in 1968. It has been the hitting. The Sox have amassed an extremely respectable 3.74 ERA in Oakland, but a rather frustrating 244, 312, 363 slash line in the Bay. Who is good in Oakland? For players with at least 40 at-bats in the city, the recently departed Eloy Jimenez is the Sox all-time leader with a .405 average, while Frank Thomas is the Sox home run leader there with 16. And the Big Hurt is tied with Harold Baines for the franchise lead with 77 hits in Oakland. Who is bad in Oakland? Sandy Alomar Sr. was hitless in 25 at-bats there for the Sox in 1968 and 69. As for pitching, Wilbur Wood is the Sox career leader with 6 wins in Oakland, while Jack McDowell tops the list with 60 strikeouts. And believe it or not, Melito Perez's 1.45 ERA is the Sox lowest in the city among pitchers with at least 36 innings there. Now, my favorite Sox memory in Oakland. On September 19th, 1993, I contend Robin Ventura hit the single most important home run of his White Sox career. Ventura's 2-run shot in the ninth off Dennis Eckersley gave the first-place White Sox the lead for good in a 3-1 win at Oakland. I remember being so stunned and so overwhelmed by this blast, I hoisted my 2-year-old daughter on my shoulders and took a celebratory lap around the house. My wife, Mrs. Sox Nerd, still recalls seeing our daughter's little head bobbing up and down as we dashed by the kitchen window. This homer and the win it led to finally convinced me that the Sox were going to win the West. Before I get to my zinger, a reminder, you can access my blog at soxinthebasement.com, and there's plenty of Sox material on Twitter and on the scoreboard at Guaranteed Rate Field. Chris, my zinger. Now pay attention. Bart Johnson is one of 2 Sox pitchers with a 12 strikeout game in Oakland. Do you want to take a crack at who the other is?
I don't know. Steve Stone.
Steve Stone. In his first go-round with the Sox, Stoney used a blazing fastball to strike out 12 A's in a 1-0 win in the 1973 season finale in Oakland. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about Jamie Navarro, pre-surgery Tommy John, and especially Oakland, California.
I kind of nailed that one right there. You could be smart like me. Give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Like you said, holes in a boat, and the captain, who I disagree that it's Pedro, I think the captain is actually Jerry. If the captain of the ship is sitting there saying, just keep doing what you're doing, everything's fine, and your boat is leaking and it's sinking and it's going straight into a storm, and you have an opportunity to at least get it to a safe port, so you can start making those repairs, you do it. But Jerry doesn't care, because what Jerry wants to do is he wants to use the White Sox as a money-making device. He wants to use the White Sox to build his prestige. And what he really wants to do is he really wants to develop real estate around the United Center. He really wants to get some public money so that he can develop a monument to himself. The idea that he told Pedro that he's committed to winning, it just doesn't show. This is the worst team in baseball history right now. That's what it's trending to be. And you're right, there is absolutely zero effort by anybody other than Chris Getz making a couple of trades and moving guys up and down. There is zero effort by anybody at the top to sit there and say, we need to do something to show that we are a legitimate organization that really cares, and we're not going to put up with this level of ineptitude anymore.
Is he trying to lose on purpose? Is he the evil owner from the first Major League movie? Like, I keep I keep thinking that now. Is the idea to make everybody so angry that they just give up on the team and then he moves it? Like, I don't know what his plan is here. Like, I can't find the motivation for being this bad. I can't wrap my head around it. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure it out. I don't understand what's going on. Unless there's something I'm missing here. I mean, it really feels like he wants to lose. It really feels like he wants to lose and he wants you to hate him. Or he's so angry, this petulant billionaire, at the fact that we have all called him what he is, an inept, terrible baseball owner. I'm not even talking about your basketball, man. I mean, you are running that franchise into the ground too, but at least you had Michael Jordan and you won 6 championships. All right? It worked out for you over there. But as a baseball owner, you're inept and terrible and bad at baseball. And the only people that think you're a good baseball man are the kiss asses that you gave money to or opportunity to over the 40-some years that you were there, or your billionaire friends. They're the only people that ever say it. You never hear anybody that never benefited from Jerry Reinsdorf saying he's a good baseball man. He's a good baseball mind. He's a great owner. You get that from nobody except for people that made money off him or benefited from being around him or need something from him. And I think he's angry. And I think he's doing the thing that Sox fans are doing when they say, let Pedro wear it. I think he's up in the office going, let these fans wear it. You don't like me? I'm not doing anything. Be miserable. Like, I think he's angry he didn't get his stadium deal. He's angry because he knows that people don't like him. He's angry at the fact that the perception is that the majority of human beings who know anything about baseball think that he's a terrible owner. And I think it's sinking into an old man that's towards the end of his life. And instead of waking up one morning and looking in the mirror and going, I'm going to prove them all wrong, I'm going to make them eat their words, I can affect change immediately now. And then I can sit there and say, look at these fools. Instead, what he's doing, he's doing the same thing. Let them wear it. Let these fans wear this team. If they don't like me, I don't care.
This is the Ebenezer Scrooge story.
Yeah.
He's giving us one lump of coal to heat the office, and we're supposed to be thankful for it. And if you're expecting him to wake up one morning and ask some kid walking by 35th and Shields what day it is, and have that kid inexplicably with a British accent say, "It's Christmas Day, sir," Jerry's not going to suddenly buy us a big Christmas goose and apologize for years of torment. What he's going to do is he is going to wait for us to come around, grovel, and say, we love the White Sox no matter what. And he's going to lean on those diehards who will criticize you and I for making these criticisms, that are supposed to love the team no matter what, because that's Jerry's mindset. He is, I will get back to this. I've said this before. He expects White Sox fans to be 1980s Cubs fans. Show up to the ballpark, take off your shirt, get drunk, have fun, and forget about what's going on the field.
That's what he wants.
That's why it's better at the ballpark.
You're right. The entire marketing campaign, everything that they've done throughout the entire season has been just to focus on that. It's not to go out and do anything. But I really do. I'm really now convinced that we have a spiteful billionaire that is doing the same thing that Sox fans are trying to do to him. For every person that sits there and says, let Jerry wear it and let Pedro wear it, Jerry doesn't care. When you're swimming in a vat of money, surrounded by people that tell you you're wonderful and you can insulate yourself the way that Jerry Reinsdorf has done, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about us. Trust me, I don't think Jerry Reinsdorf has ever listened to an episode of Sox in the Basement. I don't think he cares at all. I don't think he cares what I have to say, what 670 The Score has to say, what ESPN 1000 has to say. If he hears that somebody said something bad about him and he can use his money and influence to get that guy fired, he'll do it, right?
Which, Jerry, if you want to buy us out to get us to shut up, I'm game.
Like, that's the one thing I am surprised that he hasn't just started buying up all the podcasts. He doesn't have like a shadowy figure doesn't show up at my door one day.
Like Slugworth from the Willy Wonka movie.
Right. And he's just standing there with his briefcase. And he's like, I would like to purchase Sox in the Basement and your t-shirts and everything else like that. And, I just would like to have the whole thing. In fact, I'm buying your house. And I go, well, what are you going to do with it? And he goes, I'm just going to light it on fire. My investor, my backer, just wants to purchase your house, your business, your licenses, everything. You can take your children out, pack up some essentials in the car, and you leave. And I'm going to torch this. Like, if I had Jerry Reinsdorf money and people were picking on him as much as the rest of us do and pointing out all my flaws, I'd have a guy that walked around and did that.
Oh, hell yeah.
Just goes, knocks at the door and goes, I'd just like to purchase your house. Here's a ridiculous amount of money. Because he has it, right? He has it. He's got it. Like,
he has it.
Like, that would be amazing. And then you have to sign something that says that you'll never publicly speak about the White Sox or Jerry Reinsdorf again. He's not thinking about this, right? He's not. No. Like, he's
forget
evil.
Trying to develop the West Side. Forget trying to develop the area around the United Center. Jerry, just start paying us off.
You know what he is? He's evil, but he's not dastardly or clever evil. He's dumb evil is what he is. He's petulant evil. He's, take my ball and go home evil. That's what he is, right?
So here's what we've established. One of two things needs to happen to Jerry Reinsdorf to really make this all worthwhile. One is he needs to have a mustache implanted on his face that he can constantly twirl so he becomes dastardly. Or the ghost of Bill Veeck needs to show up in chains and scare him into becoming a better person.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always on soxinthebasement.com.